Over the past 8 weeks, we have gone over the causes and consequences of human violence, and now we have entered the section on cures. We will start with criminal justice, since it has long been the primary mechanism through which societies have attempted to contain violence and to maintain collective security. Russian novelist Fyodor Dostoevsky's famous claim that the degree of civilization in a society can be judged by entering its prisons is still very poignant because prisons reveal not only how society responds to harm, but how it values or devalues human beings. Historically, the criminal justice system emerged as a way to differentiate between legitimate and illegitimate uses of force. German sociologist Max Weber described the state as holding a monopoly on the legitimate use of violence. And this idea became the foundation for creating modern police, courts, and correction systems. Yet, the existence of this monopoly does not guarantee justice or the proper use of force. The more power the state amasses, the more important legitimacy, fairness, and restraint become. As we examine how criminal justice functions today, especially in the United States, it becomes clear that the system often adds to the harm than resolves it. At the heart of criminal justice lie two competing philosophies: retributive justice and restorative justice. Retributive justice frames crime as an offense against the state and emphasizes punishment as a means of accountability. Restorative justice, by contrast, views crime as injury to people and communities and centers around repair through dialogue, restitution, and reintegration. Many countries, especially in Northern and in Western Europe, now lean toward restorative models. Germany and the Netherlands have adopted systems that emphasize normalization and rehabilitation as the primary purposes of incarceration. The United States, however, has gone in the opposite direction, exemplifying a retributive approach so extreme that it has created an unprecedented system of mass incarceration. Beginning in the mid-1970s, the United States embarked on a massive penal expansion that has resulted in the highest incarceration rate in the world. At its peak, the U.S. confined 756 people per 100,000 residents, more than any other nation ever documented. Yet, this sweeping punitive approach did not produce a safer society. Crime continued to escalate, only to begin declining in the 1990s as a result of economic and social shifts unrelated to imprisonment. Enormous investment went into the prison industrial complex, despite overwhelming evidence of ineffectiveness in reducing violence. As a rule, individuals who have gone through prison become more violent, not less, as a result of the experience. The militarization of police is an additional stressor on the system, as it fails to enhance police safety or to reduce crime, but erodes public trust. Also, the distribution of punishment is troubling. African Americans are arrested for drug use at 3 times the rate of whites, and for drug sale or manufacture at 4 times the rate of whites, despite the fact that they use and sell drugs at comparable rates. Black men are incarcerated at nearly 7 times the rate of white men. American attorney and civil rights activist Michelle Alexander compellingly argues that the criminal justice system has become the new Jim Crow. Latino Americans also face elevated risks of surveillance, arrest, and imprisonment. These patterns undermine the legitimacy of the entire system. Research on procedural justice shows that people obey laws not simply out of fear of punishment, but because they perceive legal authorities as fair, legitimate, and deserving of respect, more so than because of case outcomes themselves. When communities experience policing and punishment as arbitrary or discriminatory, this foundation of legitimacy collapses. Recidivism statistics reflect these failures. Despite record-level investment in prisons, U.S. recidivism rates remain at about 40% and have scarcely budged in decades. This enduring failure has been described as a Pyrrhic defeat, a staggering loss for society that persists because some actors benefit from the system as it is. Entire industries, such as private prisons, correctional vendors, and surveillance technology producers, profit from high incarceration rates, even as those rates destabilize families and communities. In many places, prisons have become repositories for people suffering from untreated mental illness, addiction, poverty, homelessness, and trauma. The harshest elements of the U.S. penal system, solitary confinement and the death penalty, illustrate the self-defeating nature of excessive retribution. Solitary confinement, often administered for months or years, causes severe psychological damage, including hallucinations, panic attacks, cognitive decline, and suicidality. Studies have shown that even short exposures dramatically increase the risk of self-harm. Yet, tens of thousands of incarcerated people in the U.S. continue to be subject to these conditions. In fact, the U.S. would not be eligible to join the European Union since the European Committee for the Prevention of Torture consistently warns that solitary confinement for more than 14 days may amount to torture. And yet we isolate for years, even decades. The death penalty, similarly, has shown no evidence of deterring homicide. On the contrary, some research suggests it may increase murder rates through a brutalization effect. Moreover, wrongful convictions remain a persistent threat. Deoxyribonucleic acid evidence has exonerated people who spent years or decades on death row, highlighting the irreversible dangers of a system riddled with error. While the United States has clung to punitive frameworks, other nations have demonstrated that radically different approaches produce better outcomes. Norway, Sweden, and Denmark, all grounded in principles of normalization, human dignity, and rehabilitation, have recidivism rates that are among the lowest in the world. Norway's Halden prison, for example, emphasizes normalcy, education, and supportive relationships, resulting in a recidivism rate of around 20%. Sweden's system of open prisons, facilities where people hold jobs, maintain community ties, and reside in college-like dormitories, has contributed to declining incarceration rates and lower reoffense levels. These systems are not merely humane, they are effective, because they align with what research consistently shows. People desist from crime when they have social supports, material stability, education, and meaningful opportunities, not when they are subjected to isolation, deprivation, or humiliation. Innovative programs that started as early as the 1990s within the United States also illustrate the power of rehabilitation. The Resolve to Stop the Violence Project, or RSVP, in San Francisco is a notable example and now the premier alternative to solitary confinement that actually uses intense social engagement. Through group therapy, trauma-informed counseling, restorative dialogues, and community building activities, RSVP has reduced violent rearrest rates by up to 83% among long-term participants. Mediation-based programs similarly show promise. Transcendental meditation, for example, has been shown to reduce stress, depression, and aggression among incarcerated men. Prison-based animal programs where incarcerated individuals train and care for rescue animals also improve emotional regulation, empathy, and social functioning. Internationally, community-level violence prevention initiatives have demonstrated remarkable impacts as well. Research shows that neighborhood-led interventions can reduce violence substantially, sometimes more effectively than police-driven strategies. These successes invite a deeper question. Should we continue trying to reform a system built on retributive logic, or should we imagine a fundamentally different approach? Some scholars have argued for prison abolition, not as an instant elimination of incarceration, but as a long-term rethinking of what truly keeps communities safe. Abolitionists ask us to address the root causes of violence: poverty, inequality, racism, lack of access to housing or health care, and systemic disinvestment in communities. Research consistently demonstrates that early childhood support, strong schools, stable housing, accessible mental health care, and robust social services reduce violence more effectively and at far lower cost than incarceration. Ultimately, the lesson is clear. A safer society cannot be built on punishment alone. The evidence overwhelmingly shows that rehabilitation-centered, community-driven, and public health approaches reduce violence more effectively than retributive ones. If the United States aims to become not merely a more efficient incarcerator, but a more peaceful society, it must shift from reacting to violence after it occurs to preventing it before it begins in the first place. This means replacing exclusion with reintegration. This means replacing exclusion with reintegration, fear with dignity, and punitive reflexes with evidence-based care. Doing so would not only reduce recidivism and human suffering, but also align criminal justice with its stated purpose: to protect the public and to promote societal well-being as a whole.